Today we are here with our principal, Mr. Hess, talking about his involvement in trying to raise awareness for pediatric cancer. So what inspired you to get involved?
Well, so when my daughter was a little over 1 year old, I was actually coaching basketball at the time, and her stomach was distended, and so we ended up taking her to the doctor. I actually had practice in the morning, and they took her to the doctor. My wife took her to the doctor, and my wife called me and said, "You need to meet us in the emergency room." And so went to the emergency room and spent pretty much all day there running her through a variety of tests, and she had a sonogram, and we knew something was wrong because while she was doing the sonogram, the tech was making bad faces. And so she called another doctor in to look at it, and that was the first sign that something was wrong. And so then they ask us to leave the sonogram room, and they bring us into this room, and it's an inner room in the hospital, and there's 2 bottles of water, a box of tissues, and all these people in shirts and ties. And I sat down and I'm like, this is the bad news room.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, it is. And so they told us that they believed that she had cancer. So a week later, we took her to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and they did a biopsy on a nodule on her lung, and it tested positive for cancer, which showed them that the mass on her the mass on her liver was indeed cancer. So she was diagnosed at probably about 14 or 15 months. No. So it would have been a year and a month, so 13 months old, with stage 4 hepatoblastoma, which is cancer of the liver, and then it spread, which is why it's stage 4. So we spent the next 6 months. She went through 6 rounds of chemotherapy, and we would go to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia for the first round, and that was an overnight thing. So you would spend 3 nights in Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. We would go up Monday morning, so we'd leave at around 3 a.m. Monday morning. We'd get up there around 7, and it would start, and then we would usually be discharged on Wednesday or Thursday of that week. And then we'd go home, and her second round would be the next Monday, and that would be done in Fairfax. And her third round would be the following Monday, and that would be done in Fairfax. And usually during that time, she would become neutropenic, and that meant her blood counts had dropped, and her white blood count, I believe. And she would have to be hospitalized because she would spike a fever. So she would be hospitalized, and she would usually spend 5 to 7 days in the hospital locally, and then it would start all over again. So 3 weeks was one cycle, and then we'd go back to Philly and start the whole process over. So we did 4 rounds, and that shrunk the tumor enough where they were comfortable to remove the mass, actually she had a resection of her liver. The liver is the only organ that actually regenerates itself and can grow back. So she had 1/3 of her liver removed, and then did the final 2 rounds of chemotherapy afterwards, and was declared cancer-free, I believe, in July. So started in February, so it was all of February, March, April, May, June, and into July. Along the way, so I actually had to work, so because we needed our health insurance. So my wife actually stopped working, and I kept working. So I would take off Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday when we went to Philly. But if she was hospitalized locally, I would sleep in the hospital at night in her crib because she wouldn't sleep otherwise. And then I'd get up in the morning. My wife would come in at 6, and I'd shower at the hospital. I'd go to work, and I'd teach, and I'd come home. And we had a newborn at the time. Jackson was only, I think, 6 weeks old when she was diagnosed, something like that.
Wow.
So anyway, long story short. There was an organization called Go for the Goal, and they sold bracelets, like yellow bracelets, and shoelaces to help raise money for our family. And so it took care of like bills and stuff, because over 50% of families who have a child that undergoes chemotherapy, they end up declaring bankruptcy. Because between medical bills and, we were driving back and forth to Philadelphia all the time. You're talking about gas, you're talking about food, and all of those things. So the expenses add up, not to mention stuff we needed, like hand sanitizer stations in our home. We needed to buy her a feeding thing because she stopped eating because of the chemo. So we had to pay for all of those things. She had to feed her or whatever. And so this organization called Go for the Goal ended up helping our family financially. It was a tremendous help, actually. And I don't know if we could have done it without some of the people. I was at Langley at the time, and then the outpouring of support from the community and people that raised money for us and our family was just, I've never experienced anything like it before. And I'll try not to get emotional, sorry. So at one point during the whole thing, I promised myself that if Gianna lived, that I would start a foundation. And to be honest with you, once we were done, I never wanted to think about it again. I never wanted to. We went to a like a relay in the fall when she had just finished in July, and we got in the car when it was over, and I said to my wife, I said, I can never come back to these things, because it was just too like raw and emotional, like reliving all of the things. So because when you have a 1-year-old and she's like screaming all the time, and I remember she didn't sleep. And so she went through a period of time where she was nocturnal. So I would stay up with her all night and then try to sleep during the day on the weekends when I didn't have work. And she would throw up, and the feeding tube would come up, and we had to, because if you went to the emergency room, it was $100 every time you went to the emergency room to have them place it. So because that adds up, we taught ourselves how to do it. So we're holding her down, and she's screaming, and you're pushing a feeding tube down her mouth, and it's like those memories come back, and it's just, you're at these things, and there's all these kids that had cancer and kids that didn't survive, and it was just too much for us. So we kind of just, both of us kind of wanted to pretend, as selfish as that may sound, that it never happened. We just wanted to be normal, you know? And so what I've tried to do is I've tried to do things behind the scenes without any recognition. And I've tried to do that through Go for the Goal. So we've tried to do these fundraisers with the shoelaces, so I can help other families and set families up with this organization that I know that helps people without having to be on the front lines, because I tried to be on the front lines and I just can't emotionally handle it. So that's how it kind of started. My first year as a basketball coach, I reached out, my first year as a basketball coach, returning from Gianna being sick, because I had to step down as coach that year to try to take care of her. But the following year I came back, and so we had a goal out. We sold the laces, and I got all the coaches from around the region, because the coaching community, you guys, a lot of you play sports, I mean, it's a tight-knit group, and so all the basketball coaches were on board. We did both boys and girls, and had a pediatric cancer night, and we ended up raising like $7,000 or $8,000.
Wow.
And so ever since then, the shoelace thing has been an easy way to raise awareness and to raise money that goes to a local family. So that's what we've been trying to do.
That's awesome. Let's see. Besides the shoelaces, do you do anything else that raises awareness?
No, I mean, so when I was at when I was coaching I only spent one year coaching at Langley after Gianna was diagnosed, and then I moved to South County. And, you know, I think part of the reason that I moved from Langley to South County, there were a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons was that everybody at Langley knew my story, and that's all anybody ever wanted to talk about. How's Gianna? How's Gianna? How's Gianna? And it didn't come from a bad place. They genuinely cared, but if you want to be in the I don't want to think about this anymore life, which is where we were, I just got tired of talking about it. And so part of the reason was I wanted to change. I wanted to go somewhere where nobody knew that my daughter was a cancer survivor. So we continued to do the laces through basketball when I was at South County. But then Go for the Goal reached out to me because we had done this before, and they said, hey, you know, September is Pediatric Cancer Awareness Month. Do you want to try to do something in September? And there was this fabulous young girl named Maren Tettelbach who went to South County, who had a niece that had been diagnosed with leukemia, and so she was completely on board, and it just took off. We tied it with a football game. Both football teams wore the laces. We were able to raise a ton of money. It went to a local family, and that, I'm really proud to say, that tradition has actually continued at South County. Even since I left, they still have a pediatric cancer gold out football game in September every single year. And so when I got here 2 years ago, I don't think we did anything my first year. I was just trying to get acclimated to the school. And then last year we had the laces. We played Hayfield. We did it at the end of September in conjunction with Pediatric Cancer Awareness. So Pediatric Cancer Awareness Month. So I don't do anything extra. I try to be a point of contact for people if I've done some things like with families where I've tried to help point them in the right direction of things to consider or things to do. We had such a great experience at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I do try to encourage people when I know that their kids are diagnosed to at least go there to get a consultation, because the quality of care there was so good. But in terms of raising awareness, this is pretty much the only thing that we do. We do try to, there's Sadie is a young lady who goes to Laurel Ridge, who is a cancer survivor. She does she participates in the Coaches versus Cancer game for softball every single year. She helps throw out the first pitch, and Gianna has been doing that too. They have a blood drive for her, so we try to participate in that when we can. Sometimes life gets busy and you can't get over there or whatever, but my wife had some blood drives at her school for the couple of years after, but then she changed schools and is an administrator now and hasn't really had the time, I think, to get that ramped back up. But so the main thing that we do is the laces to try to raise money.
Well, thank you for sharing your story.
Sure.
And all you do.
You guys have any other questions?
Yeah,
I think that
like all of
yeah, and I didn't mean to.
that's why
We try to give the money to local families, and so what happens is Go for the Goal funnels the money to them. Like if we raise $5,000, they don't give them a check for $5,000. They'll pay $5,000 worth of their bills, like their mortgage, their car payment, something like that, to try to help offset, or hospital bills, like defray the cost. A lot of people have good insurance, so that's not necessarily an issue. We work with whatever hospital that child is being seen at. So there's a social worker at each hospital, and they reach out to the people. So last year I know that the money went to some people locally, which is really the goal. So this year I'm hopeful. We're doing it in conjunction with Lake Braddock. So we're doing it for the Lake Braddock game. It's in October, unfortunately, but for those of you that have seen the football schedule, we don't play this week. And this past Friday was supposed to be homecoming. I didn't want to steal, rain on homecoming's parade. You know what I mean? That's a separate thing. I didn't want to take away from that. So, and then the game in September, at the end of September, is away. So we picked the Lake Braddock game because we thought it would be a good thing to do. Like, we had that issue a couple years ago with the spray paint and everything, and we did this last year and something with the pink out. Like, let's be on the same page for something and be enemies. Like maybe on the football field, theoretically, but we're all from the same community. Let's try to help. So I think they're on board. I think Sports Leadership, I'm hoping, is going to make, or SGA is going to make a T-shirt that we can sell in conjunction with the laces. I know that both football programs have ordered laces to wear at the game on Friday night, and trying to maybe get Laurel Ridge involved. Laurel Ridge has really been affected by pediatric cancer. Sadie Murata, who passed away last year, went to Laurel Ridge. Sadie, I can never remember her last name. The other Sadie, yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
that's a Sadie Hawkins dance.
As soon as I would hear it, I would know that it's. Anyway, she goes to Laurel Ridge, and obviously my daughter goes to Laurel Ridge. So one elementary school has had at least 3 kids in the last 3 years touched by pediatric cancer. So what we try to do is, I think the main thing is to bring awareness. I don't think people really understand how many kids are actually impacted by pediatric cancer. And the rally cry, I think, for pediatric cancer people in the community is that of all of the funds raised for cancer, less than 4% of that goes to pediatric cancer. And the unfortunate thing about that is pediatric cancer, you have the highest survival rate, right? It's easier for a child to survive pediatric cancer than it is for a lot of adults when they get, most adults would not have survived what Gianna got. Now, a lot of kids probably wouldn't have survived it either. We're very lucky. So it's a shame that there's not more money that goes towards it. So that's why we try to raise awareness of and for it, let people know that, hey, this is more prevalent than people think, and it's something that we need to be aware of and try to help people out, because it is a real burden on families when that happens, because you basically have to stop everything you're doing to take care of your sick kid. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Sure.